Hi everyone, thank you once again for joining me. Today we are going to take a look at the pivot in the golf swing. If you're a player that struggles with steep contacts or even the shallower ones that get a bit behind the ball, today's video could be a really good one for you. Hope you enjoy it, hopefully it helps you with your game. So today's video is based upon a player that I worked with recently that had a really steep angle of attack, mostly in response to how they were achieving rotation through the backswing. I'm going to share with you a few of the key feels that we went over to improve his rotation, his club delivery, from an angle of attack standpoint, shell him out a little bit, but also from a face angle standpoint. So the player saw a lot of gains from these keys that we're going to go over. If you are not the steep angle of attack player and you feel like you're getting a little heavy with your delivery, this video may also be really good for you, because we're going to go over how to match up, or how with this player we matched up the sequencing to allow them to continue to move through the shot nicely. In players that get it a little heavy, often the upper centers or upper body is moving backwards through the shot, leading to the club releasing a little bit early. So we're going to cover some areas that would help with that pattern as well. Before we go into the video, if you would like any specific help with your own game, you can always connect with me at ianmellorgolf.com for online or in-person lessons. Okay, so for this player, and the first area we're going to go over, you probably won't see reference too often to help with the body pivot, but I think it's a really simple way to go about improving the pivot, and vitally important as well. So I'm going to put an image up on the screen now of the player at the top of their backswing, and you can see from the numbers there, the head data, how much the head has moved towards the target and also towards the ball and down in the backswing. So from a body standpoint, the pelvis is further away from the target than the rib cage, and the head is even more this way. So through backswing, the player's moved in this manner here. Typically what we'd see called or has been called in the past, a reverse pivot move. So the player has achieved rotation through a lot of tilting, left bending towards the target without much nice real rotation that we look for through the rib cage, moving around the spine in backswing. I've shot a number of other videos about rotation in backswing, so if that interests you, you could probably do a little search there through the channel and find a few more as well to help you with your pivot. However, with this player, we focused a lot on the head movement and the visuals that they had. So this is number one. What I see in a player with that pattern is typically the head moving down in this way. So from a peak standpoint, the peak of my cap and my eye line is now this way. So through the shot, the player then at some point is going to have to back up and try and get the peak of the cap more that way to try and allow the face to release to square up. So the first thing we did with the player to encourage more of a position at the top where the rib cage is further away from the target and the pelvis rather than this way, the first thing we did was look at how the player was rotating through their neck and upper spine area, and also adjust their visual so the head and the peak was now more this way. And you can see that if I'm here in this position in the backswing, my head and my visual is more this way, it's going to encourage more of this move here where the club's coming from a shallower entry point. And you can also see from there just so many ways in how that's going to be more helpful than the player that was here and then more that way. And in the player's movement, or just in movement in general I see in players, is when that trail shoulder gets high like this and there's a lot of left bend in the backswing, which typically moves into extension as well to the spine at the top. But when a player's in this position, they get very dominant with the upper, with that lead shoulder in transition. So that was the second thing that we moved on to. So one was for the player to get the rib cage behind the pelvis, but with a focus on how their eyes would have to see the ball. So that new position there, so it was a very different feel, or a very different visual, I should say, for the player with the peak of the cap in that position. And then from there, because the player was used to a dominant move with that lead shoulder, we would actually get the player to feel like their chest stayed where it points at the top of backswing and get their trail elbow to beat the hand to the trail hip. So that was number 2. So the head, the peak of the cap's here in this position, the backswing. And then number 2 was get the trail elbow to beat the trail hand to the trail hip while the chest is still pointing where it was at the top of backswing. And that's how we mashed up the player from a sequence standpoint, because from this position here, the sequence would be more dominant with the upper body, and then as they get here, really a lot of that motion to try and square the face. But so in that motion there, you can see how the hand would beat the elbow to the pocket. So we're here and we're keeping the chest pointed behind, trail elbow to the trail pocket, matching up the sequence in that way. And you can see in this position here, now the player is in a position to kind of push through and get tall in the finish. A common little cleanup that's very important with a player that's making those kind of transitions to always check the club face, because a player that typically gets dominant with the upper body gets the face of it open. So as we were working on that hip to the inside, sorry, that elbow to inside the hip, I've been making sure the face is more this way as opposed to this way. So we're getting that face in a really nice spot there at the same time, so we can just push off and rotate through. And that was the third one, just really to achieve a finish position where the player from here moves through the shot that way, because that player was so used to, from this position here, pushing backwards through the shot. All right, so we did a lot of stuff based around really just good pitching mechanics, and what I would call a basic pitch shot that may go, you know, 40 yards, something like that, 30 yards. And we did a lot of work at really slow speed, because that's often required. I'd get the player to almost rehearse down to here and then just hit some chips through, trying to get as tall as possible, getting used to actually from here moving through the shot that way. But yeah, a lot of really short swings, slow swings, and then slowly picking up the pace when they felt that they could actually move through the shot, control the face, and hit just a nice contact, nicely flighted pitch shot. And then over time, the player will be able to, once they can actually still maintain those little checkpoints, they can add a little bit more speed to what they're doing and slowly get to the point where they can make a nice 3/4 swing, moving through just nice speeds, nice pace, nice balanced finish. So those things there, the player found really helpful at shallowing that angle of attack and allowing them to improve their face and sequencing and balanced finish. Hopefully there's some stuff there that may help you with your game.